In a town just north of Pyongyang, officials say a missile ripped through the night sky around 3:15 a.m.
The bottom line is it's a continued effort to build a threat, sir, a ballistic missile threat that endangers world peace, regional peace, and certainly the United States.
Justice will be served, and then the process will occur when this individual rots in hell.
When the President of the United States tells you he's going to fix your problem, he asks for your vote. I was more than willing to give it to him in conference here today.
They decided not to show up. They've been all talk and they've been no action. And now it's even worse. Now it's not even talk.
The President doesn't indicate he's serious. We're not going to sit down just for a photo op.
That strikes me as a lack of seriousness about the matter before us.
The so-called mastermind behind the Benghazi attacks was convicted today on terror charges, but he was cleared of murder.
The previous administration granted this foreign terrorist American constitutional rights, and that should not have happened.
To you. You are watching Fox and Friends First on this Wednesday morning. Made it midway through the week so far, but a lot has happened yesterday and overnight, so we need to get straight to that for you. And we begin with this Fox News alert. A game changer from North Korea. The rogue nation test launching a new kind of intercontinental ballistic missile overnight, one that is capable of striking anywhere in the U.S., but President Trump remaining firm.
A missile was launched a little while ago from North Korea. I will only tell you that we will take care of it.
Amy Kellogg is covering this story for us, and she joins us now live from Milan with more. Good morning, Amy.
Hi, Heather. Well, it's very hard to imagine just how this will be handled. The Secretary of State has said that diplomatic options are still out there, but again, it's hard to imagine exactly what they are. Here is what the Vice President said.
All options are on the table, and we will continue to marshal the full resources of the United States to bring economic and diplomatic pressure to bear until North Korea abandons its nuclear and ballistic missile programs once and for all.
Cut to North Korea giving glory to its missile test with a montage of past launches. Korean state TV was North Korea's most potent missile tested to date. It flew higher than previous ones. North Korea says it could hit anywhere in the United States, and analysts say they may be right. An anchor woman recently made the announcement. The missile flew 2,800 miles high before landing in the sea. This was North Korea's 15th ballistic missile launch of the year. This is the actual order Kim Jong-un signed to authorize the launch. It said, quote, "Fire with courage for the party and country." A North Korean government statement said, quote, "Kim Jong-un, after the launch, declared with pride that North Korea has achieved its goal of becoming a rocket power." It is impossible to know what the North Korean masses out in the cold watching all this on big screens were thinking. We know their neighbors in the south were rattled, firing a series of missiles in response to show that it will not be threatened and just sit by. But of course, this just underlines, of course, Heather, how grave the threat from North Korea is, and it certainly is casting a shadow at this point over the South Korean Winter Olympic Games in Seoul.
Oh,
Heather?
absolutely. I hadn't even thought about that. Amy Kellogg live for us. We're going to talk much more about this coming up later in the show. Thank you. Well, meantime, Hillary Clinton, as you might imagine, she came out attacking President Trump over his North Korea approach, saying that he needs to soften things up. But Fox News contributor Mark Thiessen says that we need to decide as a country, are we okay with Kim Jong-un being able to hold all of our children hostages to nuclear blackmail? He says if we're not okay with that, then President Trump should take military action.
My proposal is simply that the President of the United States should stop the North's nuclear and ballistic missile testing by declaring that henceforth the United States is going to enforce a ballistic missile no-fly zone over North Korea and a nuclear no-test zone, and that any time the North Koreans attempt to launch a ballistic missile, we're going to take it out. We might take it out with our missile defenses. We might take it out on the ground. If they try to take a nuclear test, we're going to take it out. And he should give them assurances that it'll be a limited strike, just like his strike in Syria was when the when the North Syrians violated the Obama red line and used chemical weapons, he just took out the base, but he didn't overthrow them. And give them that assurance that if they don't retaliate, that'll be it. But we can stop their testing, and I doubt that they would respond.
Well, that's not the only story we're following. This Fox News alert for you from overnight. A 51-day nightmare appears to be over for a Florida community living in fear of a serial killer. Just hours ago, Tampa police arresting 24-year-old Howell Donaldson III in connection with 4 murders in the Seminole Heights neighborhood of Tampa. The break in the case coming when Donaldson showed up at a local McDonald's with a gun. Local news reports say that he has been working there for the past few months. Donaldson reportedly has ties to New York City, but has no criminal record in Florida.
In the battle between darkness and light, light has won. We're bringing someone to justice who doesn't deserve the right to walk amongst us. Justice will be served. And then the process will occur when this individual rots in hell.
All 4 victims were randomly shot and killed near bus stops. Now, this grainy surveillance video near one of those bus stops, the only clue that police had for weeks. And a possible break in a frantic nationwide manhunt to find a 3-year-old girl. Police say that Mariah Woods went missing from her North Carolina home. Look at her there. Well, she went missing overnight, Sunday night, after her mother put her to bed. The FBI now pleading with the public, trying to determine if these photos are of the toddler taken at a Walmart yesterday morning. That's nearly 50 miles from her home. Look closely. They're currently searching for the woman seen carrying this child.
Priority number 1 is to find Mariah, and we are asking the public's help in the local and surrounding community for anyone that has had contact with the family from Sunday on to please contact us with any information.
Mariah's family claims that several adults were home when she disappeared, including her mother's boyfriend, who says that he told her to go back to bed. That was around midnight. Her family says that she wears leg braces and she could not have walked out on her own, despite the back door of the home being unlocked. Well, there is drama on Capitol Hill. Imagine that. After Democrats boycott a meeting with President Trump just days before a possible government shutdown. This as the Senate takes a major step on tax reform. Doug McKelway joins us now live from Washington, D.C. with where in the world Republicans go from here. Good morning, Doug.
Morning to you, Heather. Passage of the tax bill through the Senate Budget Committee was a significant victory for Republicans, especially because 2 GOP committeemen who had expressed reservations about it, Bob Corker of Tennessee and Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, voted yes. Now, that does not necessarily mean they're going to support the full bill, but it's an encouraging sign for Republicans.
I think what's going to probably propel us to success here is within the Republican conference, everybody agrees we need pro-growth tax reform. And so it's really just that legislative process. You're seeing the sausage making occur right now to make sure that we can have as good a package as possible.
The straight party line vote, 12-11 in the Budget Committee, capped a wild day that began with this presidential tweet. Meeting with Chuck and Nancy today about keeping government open and working problem is they want illegal immigrants flooding into our country unchecked, are weak on crime, and want to substantially raise taxes. I don't see a deal. Well, Senate and House Minority Leaders Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi retaliated to that by boycotting the White House meeting of the Big 4 congressional leaders.
Given that the president doesn't see a deal between Democrats and the White House, Leader Pelosi and I believe the best path forward is to continue negotiating with our Republican counterparts in Congress instead.
The counterpuncher-in-chief returned fire later at that meeting by keeping Schumer and Pelosi's name tags in place at their empty chairs next to the president, while McConnell and Ryan awkwardly sat 1 seat away.
So they decided not to show up. They've been all talk and they've been no action. And now it's even worse. Now it's not even talk.
So today, while the Senate could begin floor debate on the tax bill as early as 2 p.m., the president heads to St. Charles, Missouri, where he will push the tax bill. No lack of drama here in D.C. Heather, back to you.
Absolutely not. And one of the senators, I think it was Senator Johnson yesterday, said this is the part where they make the sausage. I was like, well, is it turkey sausage or is it pork sausage?
Well, it's not pretty. It's not pretty, whatever it is.
That is true. All right. Thank you so much, Doug.
All right.
Well, Nancy Pelosi, meantime, had plenty of time to praise embattled Representative John Conyers on Sunday, but couldn't find the time to negotiate taxes with the president. Kellyanne Conway, counselor to the president, blasting the Democratic Party and its leadership for being reduced to acting as obstructionist against President Trump.
They're not there representing the opposition party. They're there as the minority leaders of the two chambers in Congress. And it is a major disappointment. That's why they're the minority party there, Sean. That's why they lost 1,000 seats in state legislatures, in the House, in the Senate, in the governorships, and, of course, the biggest prize of all, the White House. It's based on the policies. The Democratic Party is talking about presidential elections instead of passing policy. And I'm telling you, the American people see it to a person. Even folks who didn't vote for this president come up and tell us all the time they can't stand the constant negativity, resistance, lies, and the rest of all the blather. They want a government that functions, and he's leading the way.
And then there's this. Overnight, Congressman John Conyers spotted flying coach on a plane back to Detroit, igniting rumors that he may be heading home to resign. Now, this comes as a top Democrat ramps up some pressure on the veteran lawmaker to bow out following the sex scandal avalanche. An aide says that House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi is trying to convince the representative to step away from Capitol Hill. That would be a reversal on her part. And this isn't Conyers' first rodeo with the Ethics Committee, though. Back in 2006, you may remember that he was accused of using former aides as personal servants, but the investigation was closed because Conyers, quote, took responsibility. Well, a shocking move rocking the NFL this morning. Did you hear about this? The New York Giants benching star quarterback Eli Manning. Now, the two-time Super Bowl MVP holding back tears as his incredible streak of 210 consecutive regular season games, the starts, comes to an end.
It's hard. It's been a hard day to handle this, but hang in there and figure it out.
Well, the move announced by head coach Ben McAdoo after the team only winning 2 games through the first 12 weeks. Fans now are outraged as McAdoo is also expected to lose his job at season's end. And backup quarterback Geno Smith will now take over. We'll see what happens with that. Well, the time now is about 12 minutes after the top of the hour. And a Fox News alert for you. North Korea taking a dangerous new step toward war, firing a missile that could hit anywhere in the U.S. Well, our next guest says that he's confident President Trump is the one who can end this.
First of all, this is a total miscarriage of justice. An accessory to murder is also guilty of murder.
And outrage as the mastermind of the Benghazi attacks skates on the most serious charges against him, why the victims' family members say that the Obama administration is to blame. And America has been and still is a white supremacist society. Well, the lesson that one professor at a taxpayer-funded college is teaching that will make your blood boil. Welcome back to Fox and Friends First. It is 4:16 in the morning here on the East Coast. A Fox News alert for you. North Korea launching an intercontinental ballistic missile that has the power to reach the U.S. mainland. President Trump promising to, quote, take care of it. So how should we respond? Here now to weigh in is Asia analyst and the author of Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World, Gordon Chang. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Heather.
So let's talk a little bit about what happened yesterday. This ICBM test, it flew 2,800 miles into space, 2,800 miles up, the highest it's ever gone. It flew for 53 minutes, and then it landed off the Japanese coast about 600 miles away. And then we hear that this could reach any city here in the U.S. Were you surprised by what happened yesterday?
You know, I was surprised that they launched at this time. I thought that they were deep into preparations for the military's winter training cycle. So I thought that we would not see a missile launch until February. But, you know, in terms of the improvements in range, we shouldn't be surprised. We know that they're making constant improvements, whether they test or not. And so the United States has an obligation right now to do its best to make sure that North Korea doesn't have the money for missile launches or detonation of nukes. Yeah. And we can do that.
And that is the key, you say, to keep the money away. And how do we do that?
Well, President Trump has his September 21 executive order, which tells the world, you do business with North Korea, you don't do business with the United States. So we need to enforce that. And that isn't not only about countries that sell things or buy things from North Korea, it's also countries that handle the money for North Koreans. And that basically is China. So we need to start imposing costs on North Korea's backers, because we can strangle North Korea and we don't have to use force to do it. So there's so many non-forceful options. We heard Senator Lindsey Graham yesterday with all this war talk, and that introduces a lot of fatalism into the global conversation. We need to start talking about sanctions instead.
Right, but Gordon, at the same time, you know, people hear you saying this, and obviously this is what people want. They don't want a war. They want this negotiations, a diplomatic solution to be able to work. But we've heard about these sanctions before, and clearly North Korea is getting further and further ahead in terms of their nuclear capabilities. We hear South Korea saying that they could reach those within a year.
Well, yeah, and I think that the North Koreans will have a proven capability within let's say a 9-month time frame, maybe even less than that. But we also are hearing that the sanctions are working. So, for instance, junior officials in Pyongyang, who are part of the regime's favored class, are not getting their rations from the special distribution channel. We are hearing that the regime is rounding up children, putting them in labor camps so they can turn out products, and the acceleration of what are informal taxes indicating cash flow problems. And then Secretary Tillerson also talked about fuel shortages. So there's a lot of anecdotal evidence suggesting the regime is hurting. And the pressure campaign is actually starting to work. But I also think that President Trump needs to ramp it up.
All right. Well, Gordon, thank you so much. We certainly hope that that works. We appreciate you joining us this morning with your insight, as always.
Thank you.
Well, the time now is about 20 minutes after the top of the hour. In a high-stakes heist in Las Vegas, the wig-wearing robber who held up a casino at gunpoint as gamblers watched. And Christmas Grinches, CNN boycotting the White House Christmas party, but the White House is getting the last laugh. Carly Shimkus here with the burning response from Sarah Huckabee Sanders. That's up next. Good morning. And welcome back. Campus craziness taken to a whole new level on your dime. A public university in Florida is now offering what they're calling a white racism course for the upcoming spring semester. Now, social media is not signing up for this course. Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7. Sirius XM 115 is here with all the outrage online. So what in the world is this about, Carly?
You know what, Heather? Social media might not be signing up, but it appears to be very popular at the university. The class was just expanded from 35 to 50 students, and it is currently at capacity. Now, this is happening at Florida Gulf Coast University. Professor Ted Thornhill told Fox News that the class aims to provide a deeper understanding of racial inequality and white supremacy in this country, adding many whites have championed scores of racist laws, policies, practices, and traditions and made incalculable decisions in their daily lives that have operated to maintain white racial domination over blacks and other people of color for hundreds of years. A lot of people on social media disagree with that and are taking issue with it vocally on Twitter. Julie says, pull the taxpayer funding. Another tweet from Jack says that the class is creating racial division to destroy America. And one more tweet from Ike says, where do we draw the line and stop all this nonsense? Now, that professor maintains that the class is not anti-white, just anti-white racism.
All right. Well, much more to come on that, I'm sure. That's and the White House Christmas party, first of all, I want to know where our invitations are. But CNN, CNN, they're not going, even though they were invited.
Yeah, that's right. CNN is ramping up their feud with the White House. They will not be attending the White House's Christmas party that is for members of the media. In a statement to Politico, they say, in light of the president's continued attacks on freedom of the press and CNN, we do not feel it is appropriate to celebrate with him as invited guests. We will send a White House reporting team to the event and report on it if news warrants. So they are all business. Somebody who isn't, though, is White House Press Secretary Sara Sanders, she tweeted, "Christmas comes early. Finally, good news from CNN." Wow. So it looks like all is not calm nor bright
Sara
between
Sanders
the White House.
She's spicy.
CNN.
Yeah,
Yes,
I like
absolutely.
her. So finally, Monica Lewinsky, she is talking about this HLN documentary that's coming out. She has something to say.
Yeah, that's right. Speaking of CNN's sister channel HLN, Monica Lewinsky calling them out for promoting a documentary about her affair with President Clinton called The Monica Lewinsky Scandal. She fixed that title on Twitter. Take a look at this tweet. She changed the title to The Starr Investigation and the Clinton Impeachment. She added the tweet, "Fixed it for you. You're welcome." A lot of people loving that she pointed that out on social media. One person says, "Please keep sending out messages like this. I find the reminders that actual people are behind scandals incredibly valuable." Something that we forget often, right?
Yes, absolutely. We do forget that. We forget that online in general.
That title, neglecting one large person in said scandal as well, President Clinton.
Yes. Thank you so much, Carly. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
And if the White House is watching, send us those invitations. Well, the time now is about 27 minutes after the top of the hour. And convicted of terror, but acquitted of murder.
First of all, this is a total miscarriage of justice. An accessory to murder is also guilty of murder.
Outrage boiling over after the mastermind of the Benghazi attacks skates on the most serious charges. Why families of the victims are blaming the Obama administration. And the star of the documentary, Making a Murderer, still fighting for freedom. Will Stephen Avery get a new trial? The judge's decision up next.
This is a total miscarriage of justice.
And welcome back to Fox and Friends First. The father of one of the Benghazi victims slamming the justice system after the mastermind of the 2012 terror attack is acquitted of murder, taking the death penalty off the table. Now, Marianne Rafferty's live for us in Los Angeles with reaction to the verdict. Good morning, Marianne.
Good morning, Heather. That verdict sparking nationwide outrage. The ringleader behind the Benghazi attack that killed 4 Americans spared the death penalty. Why? Because being the mastermind behind the brutal deaths apparently doesn't count as murder, at least according to a jury. Ahmed Abu Khattala convicted of terror charges but found not guilty on 14 others. The 2012 attack on the diplomatic compound resulted in the death of U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens, State Department Information Management Officer Sean Smith, and Contract Security Officers Tyrone Woods and Glenn Darty. The victims' family members lashing out, calling the verdict a miscarriage of justice and putting blame on the Obama administration.
An accessory to a murder is guilty of murder legally, just as much as the person who pulls the trigger. The previous administration granted this foreign terrorist American constitutional rights, and that should not have happened.
Sean Smith's mother, Pat, telling Fox News she was not surprised and not happy with the verdict, and goes on to accuse Hillary Clinton, who was Secretary of State at the time, of having no heart. CIA Director Mike Pompeo calling the verdict a small measure of justice for the terror inflicted upon the patriotic men and women stationed in Benghazi. Now, Khattala faces up to 60 years in prison, but a sentencing date so far has not been set. Heather?
All right, Marianne Rafferty joining us live. A lot of controversy there. Thank you very much. Meantime, the suspect behind New York's deadliest terror attack since 9/11 pleads not guilty. Sayfullo Saipov facing 22 terrorism-related charges, 22 including murder and attempting to support ISIS. He's accused of plowing a rented truck into people along a bike path in Manhattan, killing 8 people. Saipov faces the death penalty if convicted. And the convicted killer profiled in that hit Netflix documentary, Making a Murderer, is staying behind bars. Well, Stephen Avery denied a new trial by Wisconsin judge again after his lawyer claimed that she had some new evidence proving his innocence. Well, Avery and his nephew, Brendan Dassey, they were sentenced to life in prison for the murder of photographer Teresa Halbach. That was back in 2007. And a high-stakes heist in Sin City, and we're not talking about the plot to a new movie. Police hunting for this brazen bandit who held up a poker cage at the world-famous Bellagio Hotel. The man just walked right into a room full of gamblers, pulled out a gun, and demanded money from the cashier. Actor James Woods, playing poker nearby at the time, tweeted this: Bellagio staff were fantastic. They surrendered the money quietly so no customers would get hurt. Nobody even realized it was happening. Excellent staff, cool under pressure. And no word yet on how much money he actually got away with. And Senator Rand Paul speaking on camera to Fox News for the first time since he was attacked while working in his own yard. Now, this crazy attack, his Kentucky neighbor, Rene Boucher, accused of tackling him from behind, leaving Paul with 6 broken ribs. Boucher's lawyer claims that it was over a landscaping dispute, but Paul says that the two haven't spoken in years.
You don't really know what's in someone's mind, and so it may have some relevance, but for the most part, the real question should be, are you allowed to attack someone from behind in their yard when they're out mowing their grass? It's cowardly and it's criminal.
Well, Boucher has pled not guilty, and prosecutors say that it may have been politically motivated. A lot of questions remain there. In the meantime, President Trump getting a major legal victory overnight. A U.S. district judge refusing to block Mick Mulvaney as the new acting director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, writing, denying the president's authority to appoint Mr. Mulvaney raises significant constitutional questions. Well, now that the path is clear for Mulvaney, what does this mean for the highly criticized agency? And here now to weigh in is columnist Liz Peek. Liz, thank you so much for coming in very early for us this morning. We appreciate
Good morning.
it.
My pleasure.
So a lot of people want to know, exactly what does this organization do? What are they responsible for?
Well, theoretically, they are supposed to be protecting the consumer against bank fraud and all kinds of financial entanglements that consumers don't understand. But the reality is we never needed the CFPB in the first place. It was Liz Warren's dream child event to put on another regulator in charge of the banks after the financial crisis, because in Liz Warren's world, all the wrongdoing was because of bank taking too much risk, taking too much debt on. And some of that's true, but there were already 7 regulatory agencies overseeing the banks. Right. We did not need an 8th, and particularly one that is unaccountable to Congress and unaccountable to the president. It's a very dangerous situation.
Right. So unaccountable to Congress or the president. So how do people get on board? Like, how are people appointed to this group of people?
Well, the president appoints the director, and
right.
Of course that's what's sort of amusing. Yeah. The resistance to Mick Mulvaney being in charge of it is that he's not independent of President Trump. Well, obviously Tim Geithner, who was the first director, was not independent of President Obama. He was the Treasury Secretary, and Richard Cordray was also appointed by Obama, so he too was basically someone who was enthralled to the White House. This notion of independence really is something that hurts consumers. Imagine you have been levied a fine by the CFPB and you think it's wrong. You can't go to Congress for redress. You can't go to the White House. You have no redress whatsoever except possibly to sue. And there's been no instance whatsoever where the courts have said, yeah, you're right, that this group overreached. I mean, it's a really bad situation.
And Mick Mulvaney coming on board, one of the controversies was that he's already said that this is not needed.
Well, he has said it's a sad, sick joke, I think were his exact words. But and in his very excellent presentation the other day about his role at the CFPB, he did say that he would basically uphold the law. He would follow through on things that the CFPB was supposed to be doing. But I think you can count on the fact that they are going to end the regulatory reign of terror of Richard Cordray, who resigned last Friday. And I think that's a very good thing. You have to remember that with all the bank misdeeds that have taken place while the CFPB has been in place, like, for example, the Wells Fargo scams, they had no ability, and they certainly didn't unearth those misdeeds. In fact, it was Los Angeles Times that did. So it's not, there's no evidence that it's helping.
No evidence that it's helping.
Exactly.
What about evidence that it's hurting?
Well, in the case of one particular quest on the part of the CFPB, they went after auto dealers for supposed racial discrimination, even though the companies involved never collected racial data. It was really an outrageous overreach. And, by the way, Dodd-Frank prohibited the CFPB from even going after the auto dealers. They were supposed to stay out of that. In that case, they restructured how the industry worked, and basically borrowing costs went up for consumers. So that's really a pretty terrible outcome for a group that's supposed to be helping consumers.
Absolutely. All right. Liz, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it this morning. Your insights, always great. You have to come back.
Thanks.
Well, they are known for violent rallies calling for the death of police.
Bacon, fry like bacon, pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon, pigs in a blanket.
And now Black Lives Matter is taking on Christmas because it's too white. Lawrence Jones says it's just another race-baiting political stunt, and he joins us live up next. And talk about a special delivery. Domino's Pizza wants to be there for those big life moments, including the birth of your child. They've been known for violent rallies calling for the death of police, and now they're taking on Christmas because apparently it's too white. The Black Lives Matter planning to take down, quote, white capitalism by boycotting white-owned businesses through the holidays. But here to weigh in, host on the Blaze TV is Lawrence Jones. Thank you so much for joining us, Lawrence. We always love having you here with us.
Good morning, my friend.
So before we start, let's take a look at this tweet. This came from Black Lives Matter. It says, we're dreaming of a hashtag Black Christmas where folks withholding dollars from white capitalism and used resources to hashtag build black community. Instead of spending, donate to a black organization as a holiday gift for your loved ones, or hashtag buy black. What do you think?
This is a political stunt. Look, I'm all for investing into my community. That means black businesses, black banks. But that's not what Black Lives Matter is doing. I mean, I was there in Ferguson when they burnt down black businesses. I've been involved in the movement where they support the Democratic Party, which targets small black businesses and black banks. So this is more of a political agenda, not really trying to benefit the community.
Yeah, so you don't think that it's a goal of, turning around poverty, supporting their communities? That's one thing, supporting your own communities, but this is something entirely different.
Yeah, this is an anti-white message. You might as well call it a racist message. It's not for the benefit of the community. There are plenty of days within the year that they could be actually working within the community for the betterment of the community, but they're using this for some type of stunt as a part of the resistance. Like I said, Heather, I support black banks. I support black businesses. As a matter of fact, I make it a point to go in my community and make sure I can contribute to those businesses. But historically, Black Lives Matter has not been supportive of those businesses. As a matter of fact, they continue to support the Democratic Party, which makes policies harsh and worse for black small businesses.
Yeah, but that doesn't seem to be what they think. Here's a website quote from them. It says, quote, Donald Trump embodies white capitalism. If you are anti-Trump, you should hold back your resources from him and the like. But the Democratic Party doesn't do black communities any favors.
That is such BS, Heather. I'm sorry. Black unemployment was double the national average under President Barack Obama. Right now, we have black unemployment that is at a 20-year low right now. Black businesses are soaring right now under President Trump. So this whole notion that under President Trump, under the Republican leadership, that black lives are worse is just simply not true. You look at the stats and they suggest a different story than what BLM is suggesting right now.
You know, Lawrence, I just want to ask you, what's it going to take to bring people together? Because it seems like there's such a racial divide. It seems like it built during the Obama administration, and now we have all this going on. Christmas time, the holidays, it's supposed to be a time to bring people together. What can we possibly do? I mean, this by Black Lives Matter isn't going to help the situation.
Well, you know, I'm a believer, Heather, and I thought that Christ would be the one thing that can bring us together, because that's what we really celebrate with Christmas. But it seems like that people have gone to their perspective corners, and they don't even want to come and talk with family. We see families divided right now.
Right.
Look, I think this nation needs to turn back to God, and that takes prayer and humility, and for us to come together. No matter if we disagree on politics, at least we can respect each other as human beings.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Lawrence. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Heather. See you soon.
Have a good day. Well, now to this Fox News alert. Serial killer caught. The man accused of murdering 4 innocent people, now behind bars. We've been following this story for you here, and we are live at the jail where he is being held. Up next.